The body of a young girl is discovered with her face badly mutilated and her head completely shaven. Those who are ready to assist the police with investigation by giving them any information they have with regard to her identity suddenly do not want to talk again. Someone has obviously silenced them. People are therefore left to come up with their own opinion of who she is. Some claim she was a Kayayo, and others claim she was a street worker. 3 days later, a pure white fowl is slaughtered at the spot where the body was discovered, making the case more mysterious than it was. Who was she? What is the story behind her murder? And who has the power to silence people? And why? I am Ajwa, and on today's book analysis, we are discussing Faceless by Amma Darko. Big muscles, tiny brains. Can we normal ones ever understand these street people? These are the very words of one woman in the novel. Unfortunately, there are other people who share these very same sentiments about the street people. However, Amma Darko changes that mindset through her narrative, therefore confirming the words of one British Indian novelist and essayist, Salman Rushdie or Rushdie, that says, "It is literature which for me opened the mysterious and decisive doors of imagination and understanding, to see the way others see, to think the way others think, and above all, to feel." Through Faceless, we are able to explore the concept of streetism, which is the subject matter of this story. We are able to walk in the shoes of these people who live on the street and finally come to the realization that these people on the streets are not that different from us as we like to think. There is nothing like normal people and street people, as the woman put it. Amma Darko is a Ghanaian writer, and if you are an avid reader of her works, then you are familiar with her straightforward narration, her descriptive writing style, and the imagery she employs to create vivid images of her narration. Faceless, which is her third novel, just like her first two, Beyond the Horizon and The Housemaid, vividly delves into the plight of women and children in a merciless world that is dominated by greedy and irresponsible men, and how streetism is birthed as a result. Amma Darko tells the story of this girl whose body was discovered through her main character Fofo, and as the story unfolds, we will find out at why. At the opening of the story, Fofo, a 14-year-old girl, chooses to spend her Sunday night on an old cardboard laid out in front of a provision store at the Agbobloshi market in order to be on time at her newly acquired job of washing vegetables at the vegetable wholesale market. Agbobloshi is a big marketplace in Accra, Ghana, where the story is set. Many of the events happen in Sodom and Gomorrah. If you're a Ghanaian or you have ever visited Ghana and had a feel of these places, you would appreciate this story on a different level. We learned that had it not been for the work that awaited Fofo the next morning, she would have ended up spending the Sunday nights watching adult film and drinking akpeteshi with her peers, and where she will ultimately wake up the next morning naked without any idea when they took off their clothes and what they did with their nakedness. Imagine chancing upon a group of teenagers in such a compromising situation. What may come to your mind is that they lack good morals. Of course they do, but who is there to tell them what good morals are? Who is there to teach them what is inappropriate for teenagers? They are their own mothers, fathers, aunties, uncles, counselors, and in the absence of these adults responsible for these kids, the adults have chosen not to be in the picture. Hence the title Faceless. Faceless simply means the adults have refused to show their faces in the lives of these kids. In the story, a boy and a girl who are Fofo's age and also live on the streets are once asked by a reporter of one private FM station about their most passionate dreams. The reporter, thinking they are going to mention material things, is swerved by what these children yearn for. Reading what the boy said, "My dream," began the boy, "is to be able to go home one day, to visit my mother and see the look of joy on her face at the sight of me. I want to be able to sleep beside her I wish her to tell me she was happy I came to visit. Whenever I visit her, she doesn't let me stay long before she asks me politely to leave. She never has a smile for me. She is always in a hurry to see my back. Sometimes I cannot help thinking that maybe she never has a smile for me because of the man she made me with. That is, my father probably also never had a smile for her. One day she said to me, "Go, you do not belong here." If I don't belong to where she is, where do I belong? And this is too much to ask from a woman who is your mother, the one who brought you into this very world. Amma Darko wrote the story in the third-person narrative point of view. So even though it is Fufu's story we are following most of the time, we don't view the whole story from her eye. We get to meet the other characters and get to know them for ourselves without Fufu's influence. We are introduced to Machuru, Fufu's mother. Through her, we get to know how some of these children who are brought into this world have no other choice than to end up on the streets. She's first mentioned in the story when Fufu had to go and see her concerning an urgent issue. She goes with Odale, her best friend, who is also living on the streets. Odale has to play the role of John the Baptist. When she enters the compound, Machuru is leaning by, her charred doorsill, her blank eye staring into nothingness. She did not even notice Odale enter the compound. By this description, we see that Machuru is not of sound mind. She lives in her extended family home, which houses so many people, including her grand aunt Nayomo. Machuru sits in this house full of angry mothers, screaming children, bleating goats, yet she seems so distant and even out of touch with the baby in her arm. Odale smiles sadly, but the smile wanes when she sees how desperately the baby scrambles to ferret her almost non-existent breast. By looking at the searching mouth in the tiny lean face and the spurt of energy from the enervated body that was clearly hungry and angry, Odale knew that that child was another prospective soul that would be drawn into the devouring jaws of the streets. This description highlights how some parents are unable to provide even the basic needs like food, and their children, due to hunger and anger, end up on the street to fight for their survival. Poverty is portrayed as one of the major reasons for streetism. Fufu corroborates this point by expressing her disgust for poverty. She personified poverty when she described it to Odale. "You saw poverty?" Odale asked. "Head to toe. Its face, its ugly square head, its big fat toes. I know its shape. I know its length and its breadth and its width and its stench. You smelt it too?" "Yes." She poked a forefinger in her nostril with passion. From her description, poverty is such a force to reckon with that if you give it a chance, it will trample you. She has so much to say about poverty because she has experienced it severely. Inasmuch as Amma Darko tells this long and sad tale of a diseased society, she still finds a way to include humor in it. Fufu and Odale were returning from Machuru's place when a woman who was walking behind them poked her nose into their conversation, into their business. Fufu, out of anger, abruptly stopped dead in her tracks, and the woman landed right into her and lost her balance. "Foolish girl," the woman yelled. "Have you seen what you nearly did? Were you dreaming or what? Or is it some of those your stupid drugs and the devil's leaf waking you up?" Fufu was angry by then. She swung round and the woman realized that she should have minded her business. "Yes, I am dreaming. I had a very bad dream last night. That is normality with me. But today, having set eyes on your 50-80-50 shape, I am sure to have the nightmare of a good dream." "How dare you?" the woman wailed. "My youngest granddaughter is even older than you. How dare you? And how dare you also to poke your nose into my matter and call me a foolish girl?" Fufu retorted. "Do you also know how old the youngest of my daughters is? Guess it for yourself. That is her." And she pointed at Odale. "Take your guess now and tell me, when you were my age, Did you have a daughter her age? The woman began to sweat profusely. I don't blame you. Fofo had a sense of humor, even though she was angry. Now, we all know that it is a man and a woman who come together to bring forth a child. So the big question here is, where is Fofo's father? Through the use of flashback, we discover that he has done what most of the men in our part of the world are good at, living when things get tough. We are introduced to Machuru's first man, Kwe, and this is where so many themes come to play. Paramount among the several themes is the dangerous aspect of sex, with sex literally assuming the role of a character. We are letting on how Machuru becomes pregnant with her first child when she's only 16. Kwe is a 23-year-old unemployed mason who is dependent on his mother. He is obviously not in the position to cater for a child, and his mother, who is in the position to step in and help, decides not to because she believes Machuru is a cursed child. She literally washes her hands off her son and anything that has to do with him. Here, the theme of superstition comes to play. Because of the belief that a curse has been placed on Machuru by her mother even before she was born, Churu is seen as a cursed child, and this becomes the very excuse Kwe stands on to run from her. The interesting aspect of this is, after the first child with her, he's able to overlook the so-called curse and go on to have 3 more children with her before finally running away. He lives without thinking about the consequences this single action of his will have on the 2 boys and 2 girls he had produced out of his loins. And Machuru plays a role in it. How can you keep on having children or having sex with a man who has exhibited over and over that he cannot be responsible, even for his own life? She lets her sexual desire dictate the course of her life to the extent that even after Kwe has abandoned her with 4 children, she still cannot say no when sex calls out to her again in the person of Papo, another irresponsible and unemployed man. She takes this man into the home she shares with her 4 children and allows him to stay. Meanwhile, this home is being supported by your 2 sons. Eventually, these boys leave home and never return. Therefore, there is no one to cater for the family financially. Despite this, Machuru allows herself to get pregnant twice for this irresponsible Papo. She bears 2 sons for him, and her daughters Fofo and Baby T are the ones who have to carry the financial burden on their shoulders. Eventually, Fofo has to make her home on the streets as their home cannot accommodate her any longer. And what is done with Baby T is the mystery that the story sets out to unravel. There is also the theme of failed government, where the government is represented by the police and how incapable they are when they are needed to do their work. Amma portrays the weakness in the government and how citizens have lost confidence in the government. There are characters like Poison, Macho, Mami Bruni, Kwe, Papo, and others who represent the abusers or oppressors. We also have Baby T, Fofo, Odale, Fofo's other siblings, the other street kids, and Machuru, who represent the oppressed. There is the media, represented by Cabria and her organization Mute, and Silfpo. Amma takes us through how these kids who live on the streets affect the lives of those who live in the comfort of their homes. Fofo has to resort to pickpocketing to survive sometimes. And who do you think she steals from? Her colleagues on the streets? Of course not. The author writes this story in a way to create the awareness that, with the rate at which streetism keeps increasing and how unconcerned we are about it, we are only sitting on a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. These people, just like you and I, have desires and cravings, and once we all exist in the same space, streetism is never far from us. For now, it may seem so, but in the future, we will bear the consequences. How the conflict in the story is resolved is one of the amazing things about this book. There is more to this book that I can't say because I don't want to spoil it for you. Just get your copy and I promise you, you will love this book. I hope you enjoyed today's analysis and I thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Remember to comment, like and share to engage the post. Thank you and see you in my next video.